Hello, hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 3333. Today's date is 15th of February 2025. It's been almost like a night at 10:13 p.m. All right, we directly jump into the question. All right, yeah, let's go. All right, question is how might studying the birds in a flight help us to solve engineering problems? Oh, that's really good question. Okay, first of all, where is this question came from? So a couple of days ago, couple of weeks ago, I was actually watching this Leonardo da Vinci, The Demons of Leonardo. It's a web series, by the way. This web series is actually about Leonardo da Vinci. If you don't really know who is that person, Leonardo da Vinci is the person who paint Mona Lisa painting. Okay, yeah, world famous Mona Lisa painting. And he is not just a painter, he is like a master of multiple things, like master of engineerings and things and that stuff. Okay, yeah. I was bitterly influenced by kind of like a way that he thought. Why? Okay, so basically this thing, the Leonardo da Vinci, the invention of Leonardo da Vinci, the invention that he does was kind of like a, so incredible, so amazing that probably just like at that time this was not kind of like a something exist. Okay, yeah, like a gears and motion transfer and the flying machines and stuff like that. Like basically I'm talking about almost like a 500 year ago. Okay, yeah, this was kind of like a something really incredible person. So I was bitterly influenced by the way that he thought process. I wanted to think like him, I wanted to think like Leonardo. So how do I supposed to think? So I went to the ChatGPT and ask, he suggest me such a question so that I would think like a Leonardo da Vinci. So this is one of those questions. The question says, how might studying the birds in flight help us to solve engineering problems? Okay, yeah. So looking at the birds and what kind of like a some engineering problem that I would be solve, or I would kind of like a somebody assume might be. Okay, yeah. So I'm talking about the in 2025. Okay, like right now I am recording this thing artifact in 2025. Okay, yeah, and there are some sort of innovation is actually happened regarding about the flying. Okay, yeah, like we have passenger plane. Okay, yeah, we have fighter plane. A passenger plane would kind of like a something carrying almost like a 300 400 people at the same time, which went almost like 1,000 kilometer per hour. Okay, yeah, we have also kind of like a some fighter jet or ultrasonic fighter plane. These are kind of like a meant to be kind of like a fighting things. Okay, yeah, the maximum speed went almost like a Mach 1, Mach 2, or Mach 3, or Mach 5. What is this Mach 1? Like a Mach 1 means like that speed of sound. What's the speed of sound? A speed of sound means like that ki like 1200 um, 1200 kilometer per hour. Probably I'm not really sure. Wait, let me Google it. Let me Google it. EMA Mach 1 speed in kilometer per hour. So okay, so Mach 1 means like that 1234, obviously. Like a 1200 kilometer per hour. If you achieve that thing, it's called Mach 1 speed. Okay, yeah. Mach 2, Mach 3 means like that ki 2000, 3000, 4000 kilometer per hour. So that is called Mach 1 and 2. Why they have kind of like a that speed? Because like sometimes we really need that kind of like some fighter jet so that they would kind of like simply fly that much fast, so that they won't be able to detect, like a radar won't be able to detect, because the speed of that particular thing we called as a sonic sound or sonic boom. Okay, yeah, we have that available. Okay, yeah. Like we have passenger plane, we have fighter plane, which can went to the Mach 1, Mach 2. Okay, yeah. As also we have drones. Okay, yeah. What's a drones? um right now most of the drones are kind of like a something filmmaking, or kind of like a something filmmaking stuff, or for kind of like a something the um, for kind of like a something visual. What is exactly stuff called? Kind of like a something uh, what is the camera? What is actually that camera called? The camera who kind of like a something just look at like a. I'm just forgetting that word. What is actually that word? That camera for? Like the camera would kind of like a something is this thing that there is specific camera. I forget the name, dude. I know that particular camera. What is actually the name of that camera? The camera who can look uh, for security, probably. I am not really sure about this thing. Okay, like what exactly is this thing, that camera called remote monitoring camera? Look for security, outdoor security cameras. No, there is kind of like a something word for security camera. CCTV camera, dude. Why would I forget that CCTV camera? Like, yeah, like still CCTV camera is not that thing. What is actually CCTV camera? There is also another name for CCTV cameras. Wait. Okay. Another name for CCTV cameras. Another name for CCTV cameras. What is the actually name? Security surveillance camera. Oh shit. Surveillance camera. This is the word that I'm looking for. Surveillance camera. So basically this thing, we have drone for kind of like some surveillance camera. Okay, for surveillancing things like monitoring the people and everything. Okay, yeah. So basically these are drones are meant to be kind of like a something unmanned. Okay, like basically we won't be able to sit on it and just, no, it's a kind of like a something very tiny camera, almost like a from couple of inch to kind of like a something couple of foot. Okay, yeah. They meant have kind of like a different purpose. First purpose is that filmmaking. Okay, another purpose is surveillance. Another thing is kind of like agriculture. Okay, yeah, means like that ki in agriculture field they have kind of like a something in the agriculture field they use, I'm not really sure what is actually the purpose of there, but still they use in agriculture. I'm seeing it. Okay, yeah. So like this is kind of like a stuff that we could fly. Okay, yeah. Then these are kind of like a something stuff that we are actually kind of like a something flying. Okay, yeah. But none of them are kind of like a resemblance the bird. Okay, yeah. Because the passenger plane, the kind of like a something, the drone cameras or drones or any kind of like a fighter planes or any kind of like a stuff or any kind of like just take parachute. Okay, yeah. These are kind of like a something, yeah. These are kind of like a something way that we could kind of like a something fly in the air. Okay, yeah. But when the birds fly, the mechanism that they use is a kind of like a something very different than us. What do you mean by that? Oh yeah. So passenger plane is kind of like a something very big. Okay, yeah, like let me tell you one thing. Have you seen the plane? Like you've seen the plane on the cloud, probably it kind of like a very tiny. But when you've seen up close, you realize that that plane is like a really big ass plane. Really big plane. Okay, yeah. Fighter plane is little bit small, but still it's kind of like something big. Parachute is like, oh my god, very big. Okay, yeah. Drones are kind of like a something small. Okay, yeah. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing, none of them are kind of like a something following the pattern of birds, like how the birds fly and how those kind of like a machines that we build, how does fly. Let's talk about the machines. Okay, let's talk about just a passenger plane. Okay, so let me tell you one thing now. If I wanted to fly or some certain thing, okay, or if I wanted to fly, we need a kind of like a so much amount of energy to fly. What do you mean by that? Okay, so basically is this thing, if I wanted to fly, let's take my weight is almost like a 70 kilo. Okay, yeah. If I wanted to fly, I need a kind of like a something like a wings. Okay, yeah. So if I attach some sort of wings to my hand and stuff like that, so then I have to move my hand so that it would like it kind of like a cross section cross section area will kind of like simply went bigger. Okay, what's a cross section area? Okay, so when the bird fly, okay, they have kind of like a wings. They are kind of like a spread. The cross section area is kind of like a simply became bigger. Okay, when it will become bigger, it kind of like a somethingly maneuver their body whenever they want, on which direction they want. What do you mean by that? Like basically this thing, birds are using kind of like a something wind flow to kind of like a fly. Okay, like basically this thing, they are not kind of like a producing energy by themselves. Like they are like basically when they like kind of like a somebody take off, or kind of like a somebody land, or when they hover at somewhere, they are kind of like a somebody move their wings so fast so that they would kind of like simply fly. But when they went at some certain particular level of air, they are not really pushing that much. Like basically the entire aerodynamics body are kind of like a simply work exactly like that, and they were kind of like a simply fly themselves. They are not putting that much effort to fly. Okay, when they are kind of like reach at that particular stage. Okay, but basically is this thing, what I'm trying to tell you is this thing that if I wanted to fly, I really need to move my hand so quickly so that I would kind of like create some sort of little bit of thrust. Okay, that thrust is kind of like simply help me to hover on air. Okay, like then another question is that how do I supposed to kind of like move my arm so fast? I really required so much amount of energy. Okay, and as also is this thing, my hand is not kind of like something capable enough to move that fast. Why? Because right now there are kind of like some wingsuit are attached with my hand, and probably it's not really good. Okay, so basically is this thing, I need a kind of like some certain things which is kind of like a connected through my hands, like not kind of like a some wingsuit, but kind of like a something that stuff which is connected like a kind of like a some wing. If I have a wing, then I might gonna kind of like a simply fly. But another thing is that I do really require so much amount of energy. Why? Because of that my weight is almost like a 70 kilo. Okay, so which is kind of like a something really not that kind of like a it really required so much amount of energy. Have you seen any kind of like a some bird which is kind of like a some equivalent to the height of human besides eagle? Okay, nothing really at all. Like most of the kind of like some flying birds or flying things are kind of like something less than a foot. Why? Because of that birds have kind of like some very kind of like some very less weight. Okay, why they are kind of like have very less weight? Because like a basically is this thing, they are kind of like a something their inner body, or a, like what's the inner, I don't know, like a they are kind of like a something the body structure created such a way so that they were meant to be fly. What do you mean by that? Okay, let's compare the birds and kind of like a something the species that kind of like a something let's compare the birds and human. Okay, so have you seen any kind of like a birds? They are always eating. They are always eating like all the time. Okay, and it's kind of like somebody so confused that why the birds are always eating is because of that they really require a kind of like a something energy for all the time. They really required energy. Okay, so that's why birds are kind of like a somebody always eating. Okay, another thing is that birds are not kind of like a somebody stored some sort of food at their stomach. Probably they would have some sort of stomach, but a very less. Okay, means like that a human has a kind of like a somebody stomach. Not just a human, but every kind of like a somebody species who's kind of like a somebody walk on kind of like a land or somewhere, they have kind of like a somebody stomach. Okay, when they have kind of like a somebody stomach, they would kind of like a store some sort of food, and not only store, they would kind of like a create from energy from that food and things like that. Okay, so that's why as a human or any kind of like a somebody species, we don't really eat all the time. No, like if I eat like a twice in a day, or maybe that's it, twice or thrice in a day. Okay, we won't be able to eat that much. But birds are kind of like eating all the time. Why? Because they are consuming so much amount of energy while flying, As also is this thing, they don't really have that much kind of like a storage capacity, because if they have that much storage capacity, that means they would kind of like increase the weight of their body and things like that. And if they have that much amount of body, then probably they won't be able to fly that much. Okay, yeah. So probably is this thing that if I'm a kind of like a somebody god, and if I wanted to be that species meant to be fly, that means I would kind of like a decided that they shouldn't supposed to be have that much amount of weight. So they don't really have that much kind of like a some muscle mass. Like basically look at the legs. Okay, like have you seen the legs of the birds are kind of like a somebody look like a stick, a very stick. It doesn't really have any muscles at all. Okay, yeah. But have you seen any kind of like a something the leg of any mammal things? Okay, like look at the leg of elephant or tiger or human, which is kind of like a something so big. Why? Because our leg are meant to be carry the weight of our entire body, which kind of like a create the resistance from floor to kind of like a something. It kind of like a something meant us to stay at kind of like a something at like like this leg is kind of like something really essential. Oh yeah. But in the birds, they are using very less leg. Okay, yeah. Just kind of like somebody staying at somewhere, yeah, they might gonna use leg, but they are using very less leg. But as compared to us, we use our leg a lot. Not only humans, but every species which kind of like a somebody land, which yeah. Okay. So what I'm trying to tell you is this thing that if I wanted to be fly, I really required kind of like a something really less weight. Okay, what's a less weight? Like what's kind of like a something weight that I'm assuming? Almost like a less than 10 kilo. Okay, yeah. Like if I'm kind of like a thinking about that height, then probably 10 kilo. If I'm kind of like a decided that let's reduce my height, then probably like 5 kilo. Okay, 5 kilo or kind of like a 3 kilo. Okay, yeah. If I have a 3 kilo, that means I don't really have that much stomach. Then probably I have to eat. Like I'm just kind of like a look like a bird. Okay, yeah. So probably is this thing. If I wanted to fly, there is a two option. First option is that I really require so much amount of energy. That energy, if I came from internally, if that energies came from internally, then probably my weight will be less, my height will be less. I would kind of like look like a bird. Okay, yeah. But if I wanted to create that energy externally, what's externally? Means like that I attach some sort of rocket booster at my leg, then I would be fly. Is it right? Yes, yeah. Like these are kind of like a technology that exists. Like there are a couple of people who are put little bit of rocket booster at their legs so that they are meant to be fly. Okay, yeah. But this is not kind of like a simply a flying thing. What do you mean by that? Okay, yeah. So, have you seen the birds? Okay, the way that they maneuver their body in the air, which is kind of like a something very incredible thing that we won't be able to do. Okay, yeah, like our passenger plane, our fighter plane, like some of the drones could do that. Like they are kind of like a maneuver that some certain thing, but it's kind of like a something is this thing that key the way that the birds maneuver their body in a such a way, we are not close to that. Like basically some of the drones, like they are meant to be kind of like a something do such a thing, like maneuver their drones so quickly and things like that. We call that FPV drone, which kind of like a something move really fast and really quick and something like that, which acts somewhat something like birds, but probably it's not. Okay, yeah, because birds are kind of like a meant to be fly, meant to be kind of like a somebody hover, the meant to be kind of like a maneuver their body in such a way that kind of like a somebody very different. As also is this thing, drone could do such a thing like that. But is this thing that drone is kind of like a somebody work which kind of like a somebody just always like if it not kind of like a something just crash out somewhere, like if the drone is kind of like a crash at somewhere, then probably it won't be able to kind of like a something just handle itself. What do you mean by that? Example, so we have kind of like a FPV drone. FPV drone is a kind of like a very small drone. Okay, what's a small drone? Like how much size? It's been almost like a maybe 5 to 6 inches. Okay, yeah. They have kind of like a tiny propeller. Okay, yeah. Each propeller has a kind of like a something have some sort of command or program. They would kind of like a something act according to the wind speed and weight of the drones and stuff like that. Okay, yeah. But the problem is that ki while doing flight or while doing in the air, if the one propeller get damaged or something like that, then probably entire drone will not be able to kind of like a fly, because entire kind of like a drone is actually depend on all the propeller and things like that. So propeller might not gonna fly that much. But in respect to the birds, if they kind of like a hurt their one wing, they would kind of like a assembly, like they are not also not gonna fly that much, but probably they are kind of like assembly maneuver their body in a such a way so that they are meant to be kind of like a something fly. If you are not resonate with this example, let's giving the example. Okay, yeah, so we have a leg, we have leg meant to be kind of like a run, we are kind of like a somebody walk and things like that. Okay, yeah, what if kind of like a somebody we don't really have one leg, then should we not walk? No, we will definitely walk. Like we would kind of like a somebody jump with a one leg or another leg. Okay, we are not meant to be walk in a such a way that we used to walk with a two leg, no, but we could walk. Okay, yeah, we could walk. We would kind of like only move your body from one place to another place. Okay, yeah, or we need a kind of like a some certain support to do that thing. Okay, yeah, like a basically is this thing that nature a kind of like a something, every species when they damage their any kind of like a something part or any kind of like a something organ or stuff like that, we are meant to be kind of like a do such a thing, like we are meant to be kind of like a complete that thing. But in the machine, if the one thing get damaged, then everything went damage. Okay, it's a kind of like a something unrepairable, like at that moment that kind of like a stuff get damaged, that's it. Okay, yeah, same thing happened with the drone. Okay, yeah. So at this moment in 2025, we might have little bit of some sort of technology or some sort of kind of like a inspiration from the some from the birds, and we would kind of like a simply flying like that. Okay, but not exactly is this thing. Because let me tell you one thing now, ki it's not just kind of like a somebody flying, we really require some sort of purpose to fly. What do you mean by that? Okay, yeah. So even if we kind of like a create a such a technology which kind of like a something instrument or anything which kind of like a fly like a birds or kind of like a stuff like that, will it be gonna useful or not? No, not really. Why? Because let me tell you one thing now, birds are fly because of that they meant to be fly, because they meant to be survive, because they meant to be kind of like a somebody do their thing. We fly because some sort of reason, some sort of purpose. What is that purpose? We are fly because of travel. Okay, yeah. Like basically if I want to go to the New York, okay, yeah, so probably is this thing that yeah, I should supposed to be go inside the plane, sit on that plane, and that plane went from New Delhi to New York. Okay, yeah. So this is kind of like a something a flying things or kind of like a something travel. Okay, yeah. Birds won't be able to travel that much. Yeah, some of the birds they could, yeah, like I'm not gonna say, but still, what I'm trying to tell you is this thing that ki we are using flying technology for our purpose, not for kind of like a following the birds and things like that. And even if we create such a technology which kind of like a resemblance the birds and things like that, it's still not gonna useful that much. Okay, yeah. Or I think I'm not really sure that how do we supposed to use that technology at this moment. But in the future, it might, but I'm not really sure at the moment. But the probably the flying thing that we actually create for kind of like a traveling. Okay, yeah, mostly for traveling. Okay, yeah, because the planet is kind of like something very big and something really huge, and there are so many people who are kind of like going from one side of planet to another side of planet with very fast. Flying is the only thing that we could do that very fast. Okay, yeah. So um so the question is that ki what kind of like a stuff that we should supposed to be learn from kind of like a some birds. Probably is this thing that ki I'm not really sure, by the way. Okay, yeah, because like whatever the kind of like assembly technology that we kind of like developed till now is kind of like assembly for our purpose. But still, how do we supposed to say? How do I supposed to say this thing that key the if I create such a technology which kind of like a something resemblance the kind of like a flying like a birds, will it be kind of like a something helpful? I'm not really sure yet. Okay, yeah, but still there are kind of like a some certain um, some certain kind of like a something point that I wanted to mention, which kind of like a something help us to understand the flying of the birds and stuff like that. Okay, yeah. What exactly is this thing? Okay, yeah. Aerodynamics and efficiency. Okay, yeah, that is really good thing. Have you seen the birds? Okay, they have kind of like a something one like a it's a aerodynamics, like it kind of like a something, like it's not really that kind of like a hard to understand. Like aerodynamics means like that ki the cross section area is kind of like a create a such a way that it kind of like a something repel the air, um, top bottom left right equally, so that we would kind of like a something create a such a kind of like a something just a, I don't know how do I supposed to say. It's a kind of like a something like a, let me tell you one thing. Now, why the kites are kind of like a meant to be fly is because of the cross section area. Okay, yeah, kites are kind of like a something huge cross section area which kind of like a resist to kind of like a something let down. Okay, yeah. So it kind of like a something fly because the cross section area is that big. Okay, yeah. So basically, what I'm trying to tell you is this thing: the aerodynamics are kind of like a something very crucial and very important role for flying things. Do we have any kind of like a something aerodynamics design? Well, we have aerodynamics design on the passenger plane. We do have aerodynamics design in fighter plane. We don't really have any kind of like a aerodynamics design in drones. Okay, yeah, because drones are kind of like a act somewhat bird but not, because uh, basically is this thing that ki passenger plane or fighter plane, they are kind of like a something resemblance equivalent to a bird, not fully but yeah, because of they have wings, and because of they have wings they are kind of like a maneuver their entire craft at somewhere something. Besides drone are kind of like somebody have propeller, and that propeller is a kind of like a maneuver their body, means like that ki if the passenger plane shut down their engine at the mid-air, still that plane would fly at some certain time distance or some certain time, is because of that kind of like a something cross section area and winds. Okay, same thing happened with the fighter plane, but the propeller but the drones are not. Okay, yeah. Same thing goes with the helicopter are really required to kind of like simply rotate their blades all the time. Okay, yeah. If they stop their kind of like a blades, then probably that kind of like a something like that helicopter would kind of like a went down directly. So what I'm trying to tell you is this thing that ki wings are really essential to fly, aerodynamics are really essential to fly. Okay, yeah. Another point is material science. Oh, that is really good thing. Okay, um have you seen the feather are kind of like a something very, like a very light material. Okay, yeah. Obviously it's a very light material, it's a feather. Okay, but the in passenger plane or any kind of like assembly plane, we are using such a material which kind of like assembly not only resists the speed of kind of like assembly that, like like speed means like that key. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing that key birds, the average speed of the birds are almost like maybe 100 probably, yeah, max, or 100 or maybe 150 kilometer per hour. But the kind of like a something the something like the passenger plane or fighter plane that we are created, which have kind of like a something speed, average speed is almost like 1,000 kilometer per hour. Or if I went to kind of like a something fighter plane or supersonic plane, which are went to kind of like a Mark 5 or Mark 10, which is kind of like a something very intense. Okay, yeah. So when you reach that much amount of speed in the mid air, you really required not only just a soft but as also very tough material. That tough material which not only kind of like a something sustain the passenger inside, like being safety of the passenger, but as also resist that kind of like a wind and pressure and things like that. Okay, yeah. So material is really essential. Okay, so what kind of like a material that we use today for flying, I'm not really sure. Okay, yeah, but still probably aluminum or any kind of like something, because aluminum is a kind of like a somewhat strong but have little less weight. Same thing goes with the fiber yeah carbon fiber are really strong but very light. We really require such a material which very strong with very light. Okay, yeah, as also kind of like a resist that much amount of heat and stuff like that. So yeah, material is really essential. Conservation of energy, that's really essential. As I mentioned earlier, okay, yeah, passenger plane and fighter plane have wings which kind of like a something conserving energy. What's a conserving energy? Means like that ki having that much amount of wings and stuff like that, which kind of like a something help us to, if we kind of like a simply shut down our engine, still we would kind of like a simply fly that plane at some certain distance and time, is because of that wings. And that wings are kind of like a simply very essential for conserving energy. Okay, but it, because like a while like a when we are kind of like a mid air, we don't really need a kind of like a thruster all the time. No, we are kind of like some maintain that speed and maintain that velocity and maintain that kind of like a some level of height. We really require a bigger cross section area, means like that of wings, which kind of like has something like help us to conserve some sort of energy. That's why as a birds have kind of like a something very big, very big wings. They would kind of like a something conserve their energy, if they are kind of like something mid air. Okay, yeah, it does not happen in the drones or any helicopter. As I mentioned, if they stop, they just drop down. So yes, conservation of energy is really essential while kind of like a building that particular stuff. Okay, yeah. Then maneuverability. Okay, that's a really good maneuverability. What's the maneuverability? The way that we maneuver our body or our kind of like a something, the entire thing is a kind of like a very different. Okay, means like that ki like the birds can maneuver their body in such a way that it's really incredible, really fast, and really unique way that we won't be able to understand. Okay, yeah. Same thing, we would kind of like a maneuver our passenger plane or fighter plane, mostly fighter plane. Passenger plane are meant to be follow the single path, they are not meant to be maneuver their entire thing, because passenger plane are far bigger thing. Okay, yeah. Fighter plane are kind of like a maneuver their entire aircraft, but still it's not really that equivalent. Okay, yeah, if I want to say a maneuverability that we kind of like achieve in FPV drones. Okay, yeah, FPV drones are very tiny. They are kind of like a simply move things very fast. They kind of like a simply fly the things very fast, and they maneuver very fast. Okay, I'm not kind of like a something as equivalent to a bird, but somewhat kind of like a something, somewhat, yeah, somewhat kind of like a maneuver. They are kind of like an entire aircraft. Okay, yeah. So yes, maneuverability is really essential. Now, noise reduction, I'm not really sure. Self healing and durability, as I mentioned earlier, like a basically, if the one kind of like a something wind get damaged, it kind of like a something still that aircraft would kind of like a fly at some certain distance, because yeah, but it does not happen in the drone. But I don't know, yeah, these are kind of like a some certain things which are kind of like a something help us to studying about the birds and things like that. Do I have any kind of like a something interest in flying? Yes, I do. Yeah, I wanted to fly a aeroplane, definitely. And but how do I supposed to get kind of like a something inspiration from birds, from flying and things like that? Probably these are things, yeah, stuff like that. Right now I'm really tired to talk. Okay, yeah, whatever, I just have to end here. This it, this then, and thank you.